Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. My name's Vic Gilgers. I'm here to help you improve your well-being, happiness, etc. That's what I'm going to talk about today, and also to improve my own happiness. The happiness stuff I'm talking about today is from a book I wrote about 10 years ago. I've been through the section I'm going to use and updated it as much as I think is necessary. Here is the book. It's published by Lulu, Being Happy. And I don't, I'm just telling you that because I've chosen sections from it. So it's about being happy, and I've noticed that I've used the word being because we are human beings, and it is a state, not a thing to be achieved. So we have happiness, and it is a beingness of ours. But the point I'm making through this is that often we perhaps don't understand what happiness is and go seeking happiness. And so how I found out about this was a guy called Henry Whitker Jawensky, and I went on a course of his called Super Happiness, and it was great. And I remember criticising him or asking him lots of questions all the time because I just couldn't understand why I was starting to feel happy and how he was doing it. And he took me up to the board, and in them days it was talk and choke, and he wrote on the board, "It works," and it did. And what he was telling me was what happiness is, how it's inside of us, how it's not outside of us, how we go in pursuit of happiness, and it is not a thing to be pursued, it is not outside. So on that vein, I will say that one of the things that I found about happiness was that because I was not then, I didn't understand what happiness was, and I started to get an understanding of happiness, that I also read books about happiness, and lots of authors like Alan Cohen, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Guy Finley, Robert Holden, Michael Neal, and Amy Johnson, books like that. And the point of all this is that I became happier because being more aware of happiness, I was able to start looking for it, but at a subconscious level. So being immersed in the stuff was altering my conditioning in a way. And instead of focusing on outside things that made me unhappy, which can make us unhappy, I looked at the world through different eyeballs, because our eyeballs often get painted with grief, hate, upsetness, comparisons, that type of thing. And when you understand what happiness is, the components of happiness basically, which are love and compassion and caring and kindness, then you start to look for those things in life, and what you look for you usually find. And that is certainly true with misery. If you go down that route, you'll find more and more of it. So there is a lot of and my definition of happiness is that it is an okayness, kind of a feeling of contentment. It is peace. That's probably the best word, and it comes from within. And where within, I don't know. Some people call it spirit, some people call it our soul, but it does exist somewhere. I don't know, but the the researchers say, different researchers, there's a Martin Seligman who is a professor at, I think, New York University, and he did research into happiness, and he said it was well, it was concerned with what type of past we'd had, our anticipated future, and what our circumstances are in the now. So all that was very conditional type of thought. Deepak Chopra, I think, had it fixed better when he said, it's not outside, it's inherently within us, and it is always there. Other people said, like Robert Holden said, it was to do with joy, which is a deeper level of happiness, I suppose. And by happiness, I'm not trying to be surfacey here. In other words, I'm not talking about being Pollyanna, always like the world is fluffy. No, I'm talking about happiness in terms of things like joy, being, what I've already said. It is being okay with ourselves and at peace. So when we look at being happy and we raise our level of consciousness, and that's what does it, is the more we are aware of consciousness, the more we are aware of what happiness is, our consciousness is influenced by this. And so that takes us from a low level of consciousness, which is perhaps focused on the opposite of happiness, misery, things like that, and proven that it can go from misery to joy. In fact, on one course I went on, what they did do, they measured our level of happiness. We all have a set level of happiness because we're all different, but we were measured at the end of the course, and everyone on the course had a quite significant improving of their level of happiness. So even if you are a fully paid up bona fide member of some misery club, then it can be improved. So let me just have a look at what some people say. I've got some notes here. Hafiz, who was a 13th century Persian poet, and he has a poem called "We Should Talk About This Problem," and I'll read that out. There is a beautiful creature living in a hole you have dug. We should talk about this problem. So at night I set fruit and grains and little pots of wine and milk beside your soft earthen mounds, and I often sing, but still, my dear, you do not come out. I've fallen in love with someone who hides inside you. We should talk about this problem, otherwise I will never leave you alone. I think that's beautiful, and that's why Hafiz is Hafiz. And notice the first sentence of that. There is a beautiful creature living in a hole you have dug. In other words, we often, through our conditioning, dig us into a hole which, but it is saying we have dug it, but we can get out of it because we are that beautiful creature. So talking about two things here, talking about the person that we think we are and the person that we really are. So I thought that was nice. So he's trying to express the fact that there is another you inside. We have a learnt self and a conditioned self, and we have a higher self which is unconditioned, and that's just our pure awareness of what is. The benefit of happiness is that we live longer. The researchers show this, that people who understand happiness and practice happiness live longer, earn more money, are healthier, have better relationships. So there's lots of benefits from, kind of being happier. When going back to the Hafiz thing on this kind of knowingness or feeling of being that beautiful creature, a friend of mine many years ago, John, got married, and he told me that the day of his marriage, in the afternoon, he went into some place, a park or somewhere, and he remarked to me, he said, Vic, the sky was just, I've never seen such a blue. People that looked so as if they had radiance coming out of themselves. Everything was absolutely brilliant. He was just going on and on about not the fact that the circumstances of him getting married and it being that type of day, is he just said to me that he just dropped into a different dimension of feeling. And that can come to us anytime. And it comes to us more often than not when our mind is not focused on our issues, when we're not thinking about all our troubles. And in effect, we've just got that clear mind, that quiet mind, and just our pure awareness on life. And that is where the juice is. So if we'd start saying things like, and a lot of people do say this, that the pursuit of happiness is an illusion. Well, it is, because we can chase after getting a better car, better job, better relationship, better whatever, more money, better looks, whatever. Those things come to an end. And so we get fed up of what we've got, and we want something different. And when we go on to that something different, our conditioning, our ego always gets bored with it all in the end and wants some new stuff. So looking in that direction just does not do it. I've proven that myself. And so we can, in actual fact, just be happy. And there's an old saying, unenlightened washing dishes, get enlightened, still washing the dishes, but the difference is that time you are enjoying life because you've seen through the illusion of life. Now, there is another poet, prose maker, Hosea Ballou, and I've quoted this before, and he says, "Real happiness is cheap enough, yet how dearly we pay for its illusion." So what a wonderful saying. And another story on this as to how we can view life is that when I was a kid, and so I'm talking about, 7 years of age, when my mother used to go shopping with her mother on the road, and I lived at 147 Woodcock Street, and my grandparents lived at 153 Woodcock Street, I was taken there whilst my mother and grandma were shopping, and so my granddad entertained me. So basically he was like a babysitter for a 7-year-old. Now, my grandfather, and I'm talking about early in the last century, he was a mariner. He'd been all over the world. He'd been to Africa, he'd been to India, he'd been to China, he'd been to the Americas. And I mean, to be doing that type of thing in early on in the last century was phenomenal. And so what I'm saying here is that he'd met a lot of people, he'd been in a lot of different situations, and he appreciated what he had. And what he had was living as I was living then with my parents, in a 2 up, 2 down, no garden, door straight out on the front street, just 2 bedrooms upstairs, and a kitchen and a scullery. That was it. And so my grandfather, at the end of the babysitting thing, one day, he said, "Granddad, can I have a drink?" Now, it wasn't here's a can of Coke in those days. It was go to the tap and get a cup of water. And that's what you did. And my grandfather pointed out to me that water was the best water in the world. So I said, "What do you mean, Grandad?" So he says, "Well, that water comes from 153 Woodcock Street. It's the best water in the world." So I just took this for granted. Now, later on, when I was probably, having my tea that night, after I'd had my tea, I said to my mother, "Well, I must go to my granddad's to have a drink of water." And my mum says, "Well, there's a tap there. What are you talking about? What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, no, at my granddad's, it's the best water in the world. It's from 153 Woodcock Street." And she just said, "Oh, okay, go to your granddad's." Now, as I say, my granddad knew what was what. He knew that home, where he was where the happiness was, and that he could be happy because he'd had experiences, and must have had many, of very unhappy situations, and he knew that what he had in his heart, where he was, at home, he was happy. Now, there is another story here, a film called The Pursuit of Happiness, where Will Smith played a guy called, what was his name? Chris Gardner. Now, Chris Gardner was an unsuccessful salesman, and I think he got kicked out of his house, and he was trailing around with his son, sleeping in toilets, etc. And one day his son, this is in the film, says to him, "Dad, I'm unhappy with all this, I don't like it." And Will Smith, who was playing Gardner, said to him, "No, not son, no, you are not unhappy, you are happy. So just know that you are happy. So go on, say you're happy and understand that you're happy." And the lad said, "Yes, Dad, okay, I'm happy, I can be happy." So it is a state of mind. And Gardner, he went on to be a very successful stocks and shares man on Wall Street. So that attitude and that kind of drive that he had, with the kind of okayness behind him, got him that. So we tend to think that somehow we are connected to unhappiness. And so my analogy here is that if you imagine that there is a socket over there and we're plugged into that socket via electric cable, which is round our waist, and every now and then the electricity is switched on and we get this electric shock of misery. So, and then we turn it off, we're okay, and turn it back on, we get the misery shock. And have you noticed that there is no such attachment? There is no rail cable, there is no band around you. And so it is only our thoughts. It is not the outside world, it is what we think about the outside world. And when we get an unhappy thought, the trouble is we have thoughts about that thought. And so that's how we start looping, because once we focus on those troubles with our thought tries to get around it by thinking of this, that and so, which in the end are just wild goose chases, because the mind caused it in the first place. So we just go around in circles. So I'd like to more or less close this up, but I've got some. Well, what I've been saying is that happiness is inherent in you, and you can only have happiness in the now, because we're always in the now. The past doesn't exist. Our memories of it are in the now. The future doesn't exist. Our thoughts about it are always in the now, and when we think about it, in the now, without any unhappiness thoughts, we are always just okay. In fact, without thoughts of the now, just being in the now, in the presence of your awareness, then things are okay. But I will finish on reading this happiness prose. I think it was written by Robert Holden, who I mentioned earlier. Robert Holden wrote a book many years ago called Happiness Now. So I'm going to read this. And it's called On Choosing Happiness. Happiness is a journey without distance. All thoughts of fear and lack are reversed the moment we accept that every piece of universal joy rests already within our hearts. Whatever we want is already within us right now. Wisdom, peace, inspiration is within us. It is our unconditional selves. Whatever joy we hoped to get after we found our true partner, got the dream job, bought the ideal home, and the right money is already within us. To be healed, we need to stop resisting our unconditional self, and that's our thoughts about ourselves, and make ourselves wholly available to what is already inside us. So the joy is inside, the peace is inside. We are inspiration packed, wisdom infused, made with love and blessed with joy. We are everything that we seek. So isn't that wonderful prose? I'll just read that last sentence out again. We are inspiration packed, wisdom infused, made with love and blessed with joy. We are everything that we seek. In other words, what created us knew what it was doing, always did do, and we came off that production line perfect. As soon as we became 2 years old and we got our ego sprung out, and thereafter that, the world conditions us that if we're here, we should be there. And so, no, when you can keep that mindset and be open to happiness, then it's there. and it is deeper than you think. And the more you look at it, the more you will see it and be able to introduce it into your life. So thanks for listening. I hope that's helped. Take care. I love you all. Thank you.